Look at the wheel count on this thing. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. 6 wheels on one side. I've analyzed a lot of concept motorhomes on this channel. I have never, not once, seen a 12-wheel configuration on a vehicle that was designed to be someone's home. And here's the thing, that's not even the most interesting part. What you're looking at right now is an AI-generated concept design. Full transparency up front, this doesn't exist in any factory, no production line, no delivery date. It was built in imagination, not in steel. But the design language here is so specific, so considered, that it deserves a full breakdown. Because when you remove real-world constraints, this is what design becomes. We're going full walk-around today. Exterior, interior, powertrain logic, and at the end, I'm going to tell you which one single detail on this concept I genuinely believe is ahead of its time and should exist on real vehicles right now. But stay with me because there's something happening on the upper deck of this vehicle that I haven't seen on anything else in this entire category, and I want to build to that so you understand exactly why it matters when we get there. Let's start at the front, because this is where the designer declared their intentions. That grille is not just a grille, it's a vertical mesh panel, tall, commanding, almost architectural, divided into symmetrical sections with a repeated diamond lattice pattern that catches light like a piece of jewelry at scale. The proportions are closer to a ceremonial gate than an air intake. This designer wasn't thinking about aerodynamics first, they were thinking about presence. And it works. It genuinely works. Below the grille, there's a full-width lower fascia with a sculpted splitter that reaches forward aggressively, the kind of geometry you see on track cars, not motorhomes. The headlights are narrow, horizontal, with an icy blue-white DRL signature that cuts across the face like two precision lines drawn with a technical pen. The message the front face is sending is very clear. This thing is not apologizing for its size. It's leading with it. Now, step back and take in the full side profile, because this is where the design philosophy really reveals itself. The body is split into two distinct zones. From the beltline down, deep black, almost graphite, a lower section that functions like a plinth, heavy, solid, planted. And from the beltline up, pearl white, glacier, the kind of finish that looks different at sunrise versus midday versus golden hour. And running between those two zones, a panoramic glass strip that extends nearly the full length of the vehicle. We're talking about something close to 8, maybe 9 meters of continuous glazing at living level. In practical terms, if you're sitting inside this concept, you don't have walls. You have a window that is the wall. Think about what that means. Imagine pulling this into a forest clearing somewhere, remote, somewhere with no hookups, no signal, just trees and sky. You wake up in the morning and instead of staring at an interior panel, you are looking at that landscape through floor-to-ceiling glass. That's not just a design choice. That's a completely different relationship with the outdoors. Now, the roof. This is the detail I mentioned at the top of the video, and now that you've seen the full profile, you're going to understand exactly why it stopped me. Sitting on top of the main habitation body, raised, glazed, with what appears to be its own independent canopy structure, is an upper deck. Not a roof vent or a skylight, an upper observation level, the kind of feature you'd find on a super yacht flybridge transplanted directly onto a land vehicle. The geometry of it is essentially boat hull inverted. The canopy arcs upward with a shallow, sweeping curve that manages both drama and, interestingly, some degree of aerodynamic practicality. It's not just sitting up there looking impressive. It's shaped like it knows it's moving through air at speed. And finally, back to those wheels, because we need to talk about this. 6 axles, 12 wheels total. Low profile, matte black rims, the kind of turbine spoke design you'd find on a sports sedan, scaled up to a size that has absolutely no right to look this purposeful. In a real engineering scenario, a configuration like this would be about one thing: distributing the weight of a fully equipped habitation module across a chassis that can handle it. The more axles, the lower the load per wheel, the smoother the ride over irregular terrain. In a camping context, think about it. 6 axles doesn't just mean load capacity, it means genuine off-road stability, the ability to distribute that mass across uneven ground at a campsite that no conventional motorhome would even attempt. The exterior alone makes this one of the most conceptually ambitious designs I've seen in this category. But I'll be honest with you, the exterior is almost the easy part. What I believe is happening inside this vehicle is where things get genuinely fascinating. Now, there's no interior render with this concept, and that's actually fine, because based on what we can observe from the exterior proportions, the glass placement, the roofline geometry, and the overall philosophy of this design, I can build a very credible picture of what the interior logic should be. Think of this as detective work. Based on the wheel configuration and the visual scale of the concept, I'm estimating the habitation section at somewhere between 12 and 15 meters in length, and possibly 3 meters in interior height at its peak, that upper level section included. If that ceiling height estimate is even close, and the roofline profile strongly suggests it is, then you're talking about genuine full stand-up height throughout most of the living space, plus an upper level that adds somewhere between 1.5 and 2 additional meters of vertical space. In a vehicle this size, that's the difference between feeling like you're staying somewhere and feeling like you're enduring somewhere. The panoramic glass strip we saw on the exterior runs along the primary living zone. This tells us exactly where the designer intends you to spend your waking hours, because they've given that zone an uninterrupted visual connection to the outside world. I'd expect the living area to run approximately the central third of the body, a lounge configuration facing outward toward that glass, not a traditional sofa against the wall layout, something more like a viewing salon. The glass dictates the furniture arrangement, not the other way around. Imagine sitting in that space at dusk, parked somewhere with a mountain view, watching the light change. No screen in the world competes with that. The designer understood that the greatest luxury they could offer wasn't more technology, it was more sky. Now, the upper deck, and this is the space I find most compelling about this entire concept. Access would almost certainly be via an internal staircase positioned at the rear or center of the body, a folding or spiral configuration to minimize floor space impact. The deck itself, based on the exterior geometry, could be approximately 4 to 5 meters in length and 2 meters in width. But here's what I think is the genius of it. That space serves different purposes depending on where you park. In a forest clearing at 2 a.m., that upper deck is an observatory, lying flat on your back, glazed canopy above you, looking at a sky full of stars through glass. At a coastal bluff, it's a 360-degree panorama platform. At a mountain pass, you're above the tree line in comfort. This is the upper deck as an living argument for leaving home in the first place. Given the length of this vehicle, I'd place the sleeping area toward the rear of the main deck, typically the quietest zone, furthest from the powertrain. The two-tone exterior finish suggests a separation of private and communal zones, and the deeper black lower section at the rear reinforces this reading. We're likely looking at a full-width master sleeping area, meaning the bed runs transversely across the vehicle width, not lengthwise. In practical terms, that means more floor space, better proportions, and a sleeping experience closer to a hotel room than a traditional RV berth. The kitchen in a vehicle with this design philosophy would be positioned to separate the living zone from the driving cockpit, typically a galley configuration running perpendicular to the length of the body. Given the interior width, we're probably looking at two parallel work surfaces with genuine countertop depth, not the compromise counters you find in conventional motorhomes. Induction cooking, concealed appliances, deep single-basin sink. The visual language of this exterior doesn't allow for a cluttered, equipment-heavy kitchen. Everything would be integrated and hidden. This is a kitchen designed by someone who cooks, not someone who tolerates cooking on the road. The front cab section is visually distinct from the habitation body. Lower, more aggressive, with that sculptural front face we discussed. Inside, I'd expect a dramatically different aesthetic to signal the transition between driving and living. Given the scale and the design intent, this isn't a truck cab. This is closer to an aircraft flight deck, a curved wrap of displays, heads-up navigation projection, tactile controls for a vehicle that probably requires active suspension management across multiple axles. The visibility from that elevated position with the narrow DRL signature we see at the front would be extraordinary. You'd feel like you were piloting something, not just driving it. Let's talk about what would actually need to power something like this, because the engineering challenge here is genuinely interesting. A vehicle of this scale and mass, and we're almost certainly looking at a curb weight north of 15,000 kilograms fully loaded, cannot be pushed by a conventional single motor or a standard diesel powertrain without serious performance compromises. In a near-future production scenario, the logical answer is a distributed electric drive architecture. Multiple motors, one per axle potentially, each optimized for torque delivery at that specific load point. This isn't science fiction. Heavy transport and mining vehicles already operate on similar principles today. The practical advantage of this for a vehicle that spends time on uneven terrain or off-grid campsites, individual axle control, the ability to route power precisely to wherever grip exists. That's a meaningful capability when you're parking on a hillside in a 15-ton home. If this concept were engineered for reality, we're probably looking at a battery architecture in the range of 600 to 800 kilowatt hours, roughly 4 to 5 times the pack in a large luxury electric car, to provide meaningful range and genuine off-grid capability. The chassis depth between the axles, visible in the exterior profile, strongly suggests that space is being used for energy storage. The designer appears to have placed mass low and central deliberately, which would give a vehicle this tall a fighting chance at reasonable handling dynamics. That's not an accident. That's a designer who understands physics. That upper deck canopy we keep discussing, in a real-world build scenario, the entire surface of that glazed roof section would be the obvious candidate for integrated photovoltaic panels, the kind of thin-film solar that's now achieving real efficiency numbers while remaining visually unobtrusive. I'd estimate, based on the surface area visible, that you could realistically integrate 8 to 12 square meters of solar generation capacity up there. Not enough to run everything, but enough to meaningfully extend your off-grid window. Combined with a battery pack of the size we're discussing, you're potentially looking at 3 to 5 days of fully self-sufficient camping capability. That's a number that changes where you can actually go. So, where does this leave us? This is an AI-generated concept. It's fictional. It will never roll off any factory floor exactly as you've seen it today. And honestly, that's not the point. The point is what it makes you think about. The upper observation deck. Full stop. I've said it 3 times in this video, and I'll say it again because it's the single bravest idea in this entire design. The concept of treating the roof of a motorhome as a destination within the vehicle, not just insulation between you and the weather, is genuinely forward-thinking.
The fact that it takes direct design DNA from yacht architecture and applies it to land mobility, that's the kind of cross-disciplinary thinking that occasionally produces something real. The glass, the two-tone architecture, the front face that refuses to be ignored, all of it is consistent. All of it tells the same story. What I'd question: the 12-wheel configuration is visually extraordinary, and I understand the structural logic, but in reality, that many axles create steering geometry challenges that are genuinely difficult to solve elegantly. A real engineering team would probably find a way to achieve the same load distribution with fewer, larger axles. It'd be less dramatic, but more buildable. I'd also want to know more about how that upper deck handles wind loads at highway speed. It's a substantial sail surface up there. That would require engineering work that the concept doesn't address. What I'd change: if someone brave enough to build this ever asked me, I'd want a rear design as considered as the front. From what we can see, the rear of this concept is its weakest angle. For a vehicle this dramatic in profile, the tail needs to deliver a full-width light bar, a diffuser element, something that closes the visual loop the front opens so boldly. What it says about where we're heading: this concept represents something I think is genuinely happening in design culture right now. The boundaries between categories are dissolving. Yachts are influencing land vehicles. Aircraft interiors are influencing home design. And concepts like this one, fictional, yes, but carefully imagined, are part of the conversation about what luxury mobility actually means when you remove the constraints of what's been done before. It's a concept. It's fictional. It's still one of the most thoughtfully imagined mobile living spaces I've broken down. And that upper deck, if someone doesn't build something like that on a real vehicle within the next 10 years, I'll be genuinely surprised.